players in Nigeria's real estate sector say it can drive GDP growth in Africa's largest economy if it is well harnessed. Here's a comprehensive outlook on the sector, which has been compiled by Livent and North Court Real Estate in a new report for 2023. We are very happy to have Ayo Ibaru, Chief Operating Officer and Director of Research at North Court Real Estate. Ayo, always a pleasure. Should I say Happy New Year? I think it's first time.
Yes, it's been too long, but great seeing you.
Exactly, good to have you again.
Congrats on 10 years.
Yeah, thank you so much. So look, deep report, lots to get into. Real estate GDP growth has been in single digits. Can we get to double digits, Ayo?
I think we can, but so the way the NBS typically assesses contribution to GDP from the real estate sector is it looks at the services sub-market, right? It looks at how valuation, property management, and things like that contribute towards the growth of the economy. And those things only go up when we have an increase in the supply of assets into Nigeria's real estate market. So, I mean, in short order, we need more houses being developed. We need more retail developments. We need quite a bit more infrastructure than we're seeing now. So that, of course, will now trigger the need for more services, and then that, of course, will find its way into the GDP calculation.
What about construction? I'm looking here, construction GDP, third quarter, 5.5. It's been going up. So if you compare it to where we were Q2 of last year, and then the first quarter, or rather the third quarter of 2021, which was at 4.1%. Is that the most critical? Is this the most critical, I guess, piece when it comes to growth in real estate?
I mean, construction does have a few key advantages. It does have a sort of multiplier effect on how the entire built industry functions. So, for example, if you're able to build a house, you pretty much create jobs for a minimum of 13 to about 15 different people. But considering that we import over 90% of our inputs into development, into construction rather, the currency exchange process is pretty much putting a chokehold on how far construction can go. So at the end of the day, and I don't blame construction contractors or developers, at the end of the day, you only find out that it's profitable to develop for upper middle income earners, and then of course the high end and then luxury. For construction to move up, we have to pretty much scale our supply of completed projects. Now, for comparison, I did a study on the top 20 construction contractors and developers in the US for 2022. And do you want to take a wild guess as to how many apartments the number one construction contractor built residential in the US? Just a wild guess.
In a year?
In a year.
10,000.
86,700.
86,000.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've said this for a while. We do need to get to a point where houses are pretty much produced, like iPhones, like Samsung phones. We can't be debating, land issues. Take, for example, just near us here in Ghana. So the Ghanaian government, in trying to solve the housing problem, and then, of course, more to your question, encourage construction activity, they pretty much got developers who are focused on low and mid-income housing only. And then give them three things, I believe. One was infrastructure, two, free land, and three, a 5-year tax-free period, non-negotiable for only low-income and mid-income developers. So there are quite a number of ideas working out there, and I think with the right framework, we can adopt a few. Okay,
so you mentioned scaling and infrastructure and so on. I think looking at contribution to GDP, construction is like 3.2, real estate 5.6 or something. Is government infrastructure projects, is that where we can see that growth, or does it have to be more than that?
So here's my situation with the input of the government to infrastructure. One, the projects are too small. Two, infrastructure projects take too long. And they cost too much. Now, before we went live, we were discussing about the Lagos Rail project. We do have a report that will be coming out, but we want to make sure.
Are you releasing it after the election?
We have to, so we don't come across as biased. But
put it out before the election.
No, but
okay, I get you.
You do have a point, but then again, one has to be careful. I mean,
right.
I will just say this so you have an idea of where I'm going because it's public information.
Okay.
So the CRCC that provided funding for the Lagos Rail in their Q1 2010 report.
Yeah.
I'm not bringing this up. It's public
It's
information.
public info, yeah.
Yeah. So they suggest that 3 billion in 2010 was provided for that project.
What currency? 3 billion what?
Dollars.
Okay, dollars. All right.
And this was corroborated by Daily Champion 2010. $3 billion.
Okay.
So how is it that in 2022, 2023, the project is $1.5 billion?
Right.
I don't know where the numbers...
When is this report coming out?
Later
on, we'll bring you back.
Just a week after, a week after, we will of course give you exclusive access, prior access, because you're, with us, and then we'll put that. But then we do also have to, on balance, state the short, medium, and long-term impacts of that project.
Right.
So if we do see consistent adoption and it doesn't break down, we can expect property values around where the train stations are to grow and so on and so forth. There's just a lot in the report.
We're bringing you back when that report comes out.
I always appreciate being here.
Housing deficits, Ayo. For so long, it's been 17 million units that they've been bandying about, but the international, who is it now? The International Human Rights Commission, IHRC, they're saying it's 28 million. What is the number, Ayo? What do you guys see the housing deficits at? What
I mean, the agency that came up with those numbers were, in my view, rigorous in their methodology. They just didn't think that out of their hat.
Yeah.
And the 17 million figure has been pretty much the bandied around number for quite a while. So that brings us closer to where the number really is. We can take that number as a starting point and then move from there. I guess the bigger question is, what are the opportunities there? And I do think that with the right framework, we can create a incentive-based system or an incentive-based system that pretty much compels developers, because of the profitability of the project, to get into producing houses. I mean, it's an opportunity that brings in so many returns, so many rewards, and it will of course find its way, like we started out this segment, back into the economy. We can build more houses. It's not a big deal as we are making it sound. I mean, as of 3 years ago, Bloomberg released a report. China has 50 million empty houses. Wow. Not 5, not 10, 50 million empty houses, and that's China. And, we have people who are building these things in record time, so we can get it done. It's just a matter of creating the right tax incentives and reducing the amount of time it takes to get approvals. I mean, when the ease of doing business reports says that it takes you too long to get your approvals through, then we are having a problem. And this crisis is somewhat existential because we have 220 million as our official population numbers, and you look at the housing deficit now, we are choosing to go with 28 million. It's likely more, but at the end of the day, there are too many problems that can be solved by getting housing going, and once it's prioritized, everything falls into place. Let me give you one last example. I think it was a study that was done in the US, and it was around the question of homelessness. And the municipal government spent a total of $10,000 on one individual, I think over a 3-year period, because he was homeless. And how? He would fall sick, and because society is structured, they would have to give him medicine, they would have to take care of his mental health, they would have to do all kinds of things because he didn't have a home. So home building, I think, with the right framework, with the right incentives, and getting the right partnerships on board, we can get a lot done.
Very quickly, I have to ask you about mortgage rates, Ayo. Your report, I think the average primary mortgage bank, commercial bank rates is 28%. I mean, that's
double digits.
Yeah. How housing deficit is one. Another, if the houses are there, how do you move in, and how does anybody survive with rates this high? How do we bring it down?
So the mortgage industry suffers from quite a number of issues, one of which is the rates are built in part on what the macroeconomic circumstances suggest. The fact that we are indebted as we are, the fact that our currency is as weak as it is, And even the source of funding for mortgages or for mortgage companies is also at a high rate. And a few ideas have been put forward. One, we might need to avoid federal government bonds as a source for funding mortgages and pretty much work with the commercial banks and other such institutions to find a way of pooling income or savings, funds in savings accounts. And then that, of course, will be insured or backstopped by the federal government. You see, this is why, and I always say this anywhere, forget the suit and tie I'm wearing, right? My mother built her houses with cooperatives, and that's why cooperative funding has, in the last 4 or 5 years, become notorious for the rate at which they've seen their members build homes, because there's a way the interest rates are worked, and there's a way the system functions, and they are able to just charge a margin on working with funding from cooperatives. And I think our mortgage system can borrow from that. Find a way of getting low rate funding into the system, and then of course ensure that the system is rigorous, because again, we have to say it, if our system isn't rigorous enough to ensure that all the loopholes are closed, then it will only last for a few months after it started.
All right, just for our viewers, PMB, of course, primary mortgage banks, CB, commercial banks, that rate again, 28%. We still have, of course, Ayo Ibaru, who is the Chief Operating Officer and Director of Research at Northcote. Ayo, we're going to hang on to you. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to continue the conversation after the break, so do stick around. Right. It is the Global Business Report here on Rise News. We're talking real estate in Africa's largest economy. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Global Business Report here on Arise News. We're having this all-important discussion on real estate. Of course, we have the Chief Operating Officer, Director of Research, Ayo Ibaru, with Northcote Real Estate. They always give us these in-depth reports on the real estate market. Ayo, thanks for sticking around. So I want to take you back. We're talking mortgage rates, but I want to take you back to the housing deficits, the 28 million units discussion. You gave justice to that. Yes. But your report says that the money needed to fund or rather to close the housing deficit is, drumroll, Ayo, 21 trillion naira. That's basically our budgets for 2023. Where do we get the money, Ayo, to close this deficit? Where do you get 21 trillion?
So to start off, the 21 trillion figure was pretty much put out by the Bank of Industry.
Okay.
And they are known, of course, for putting in the work when it comes out to pushing out data. Now, I think another question I could add to what you just said is, what kind of problems do we solve if we are able to, in a sense, close or at least bridge the housing deficit? Now, a 21 trillion naira question cannot be answered at once. It will be answered gradually. I think what the built industry wants to see is a commitment to addressing the problem. And we should remember that housing development is a highly profitable industry. And once we have a starting seed contribution from the federal government and, of course, key stakeholders, we can easily get partnerships. It is rare that you find governments trying to solve problems like this on their own. There's always international lending. There's always international partnerships that you can put together. There is no way we can raise that money in and of ourselves. But once we get the ball rolling, what you will find is the multiplier effect will make that problem solved sooner rather than later. So one, we need a starting pretty much seed grant type thing from the government. We need a commitment to solving the housing problem. Ghana has done that already. And I think I should say it here. It is impossible for any country to leave the ranks of the third world, as they call us, and move up without solving or at least effectively addressing the housing problem. So we will remain a poor nation as far as the international community is concerned if we are unable to solve the housing problem. So it's one stone, as they say, that will kill two to three birds.
I like that pun, stone, since cement and all these other things and bricks are needed to build. Ayo, you mentioned imports and so on.
Yes.
How affordable housing? That's the one I want to come to. Affordable housing. That's something that the government has talked about. State government.
Yes.
How can you build affordable housing when you've got inflation in double digits and currency challenges? How do you fix that?
So to quote a sitting minister, you can't have affordable housing when the land is not affordable and the inputs are not affordable.
Exactly.
There are quite a number of things I might need to unpack, and I'm not sure how much time we have left. So here we go. The first thing you want to do with the concept of affordable housing is ensure that the process for approvals on projects that focus on affordable housing is dealt with. I can't be spending 6 months to a year to get approvals for housing that will be less than what the average pricing is, when compared.
Right.
The second thing is construction materials. Sadly, we still import, as I had said earlier, but we have to start the conversation around manufacturing construction materials in Nigeria. And then there's even a higher level of that where not only are we manufacturing, but then we have that sync between the manufacturers and the construction contractors. So, hey, this is too expensive, make it cheaper. Hey, this doesn't work well, can you change it? And so on and so forth. That will contribute. This is a multi-decade year strategy.
Yeah.
I think another thing we need to look at is the government should begin to think about letting go of its tight grip on land. Yes, we have a law that allows the state governor to do pretty much whatever he wants with
the Land Use Act, right? Yeah.
I was trying to avoid but,
Sorry.
I mean, yes, we agree all power belongs to you. But you see, at this point, we need to solve a problem. So in the meantime, since our construction contractors still need to import, then can we accelerate the time it takes for them to process the imports of what they're bringing in?
Gotcha.
Can we provide a tax credit system that helps balance out that type of costing? And then we have to make building low-income and mid-income houses attractive to developers. They will deliver. It's the private sector. Your books have to balance. So they will deliver. And then it will now be the central authority that will decide how these things are then distributed. So I think starting with those points, we can make some progress.
Yeah, there's a quote from your reports saying that the federal government intends to boost, I'm getting back to mortgages now, mortgage funding to 712 billion by 2024 as part of its plans for a 5-year strategy that started in 2010. Now, there's a new government in place coming in, so we're hoping for continuity, but is this realistic as far as funding?
So, I mean, central governments have a lot of heft when it comes to raising funding internationally. So if they say they can do it, then one is wants to believe that they can. I guess the question is how much of that money makes its way into actual housing construction.
Yeah.
How much of that funding raised makes its way into the projects themselves. History suggests that the money rarely ever does, as we have seen in the Lagos Rail project.
Yeah.
And we need to find a way around tightening that process where we can fully account for the funding that comes in. But then if the money comes in and we're able to build the right framework around it, then yes, it can do more than we even think.
Real quick, I want to ask you about, and I know we're running out of time, there's a really busy chart you've got on residential vacancy rates in Lagos. Is this, if you can, yeah, there it is. I mean, this thing looks, it's intimidating. I had to sit down and study this thing for a number of years. What's happening here? Just to summarize, are you saying that residency rates in Lagos are increasing or what?
So in 2016, the World Economic Forum confirmed that 85 people come into Lagos every hour.
Oh, wow.
Now, what this is suggesting is on the key nodes that we have tracked, whether it's Lekki, whether it's Surulere, whether it's Victoria Island and all of that, vacancy rates have dropped. So what that means is houses are being built for more people.
Okay.
And occupancy rates are improving. That's really the long and short of it. Again, it also means that developers have wisened up to building what people want. So in the old days, you would see 5-bed apartments, 4-bed apartments, but now they've wisened up to 2-bed, 3-bed apartments, and that's pretty much what you see on that chart. I mean, it's not as busy as it looks. The red line, okay, this is national TV. I can't be lecturing.
I know.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's why I admire your research, guys. All right, we've less than a minute to go. What's your outlook for the real estate sector? Are you new government coming in? There's so much going on. Are you optimistic? Should people buy more land? What's your outlook for real estate in Nigeria?
I've always been optimistic about Nigeria. I guess we just have a few things that we need to clear out. The way the elections are going, the way the announcements are going, it doesn't communicate much confidence with the international market. So locally, we say we know what to do, we can invest, but then you need that external injection. So take, for example, one of the leading investor market players raised $45 million, and their mandate is to invest in sustainable developments across West Africa. You can't do anything significant and account for that money without putting a bit of it in Nigeria.
Right, facts.
So we need to communicate stability. We need a new president sworn in, and then we need the signs of reform to be clear. And from there, we can now expect foreign capital. But then, in terms of in-country, we still have a lot of our partners who we work with. They are working on their projects. We have those in our agency divisions who are, reviewing rent upwards, and people are paying, and so on and so forth. So we still see a bit of growth in the various sub-markets, whether it's hospitality. Radisson has signed a few agreements, whether it's land purchases. We see growth in the various sub-markets, but a lot of it is still locally driven. And what we saw as we ended last year in terms of foreign investment has slowed a bit, because they are optimistic, but at this point they are cautiously optimistic, adopting a wait-and-see strategy to see how things play out.
Hey, you guys always give us great reports. It's always great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. Ayo Ibaru, the Chief Operating Officer, Director of Research at North Coast Real Estate. Thank you so much, Ayo.